Hello teachers, and welcome to Trello for K-12 lesson planning. In Module 1, I will talk about what Trello is and why we should use it. At the end of the video, you will know about Kanban boards and Agile principles. It is on these things that Trello is based. Trello is a productivity tool that can be used in any industry on any project. It is a digital Kanban board. Kanban boards were first used in Japanese grocery stores to purchase inventory just in time. In that way, they were able to purchase things that were needed in the immediate future, and they weren't storing surplus groceries. For the purposes of planning, boards represent projects, and the lists within those boards represent the workflow or the work in progress. Often they're set up with to do, doing, and done, and in certain industries they list it as backlog, which is a list of all the future work to be done. The cards on those lists represent the tasks that need to be completed in order for the project to be finished. You may be wondering how a Japanese grocery store inventory system can at all relate to K-12 lesson planning. So, Taichi Ono was a Japanese engineer and businessman who adopted the Kanban model for Toyota's manufacturing process. They also called this the lean manufacturing process. This was found to be such an efficient way of doing things that it was adopted eventually by many other industries. In the year 2005, David Anderson published a book on Kanban, and it became even more popular. Elsewhere, a desire to make work more efficient or agile was also taking hold in the software development world. In 2001, a group of leaders from various industries convened in Snowbird, Utah, and they wrote the Agile Manifesto. This can be found in many different languages, and in this manifesto, this group of people set down their priorities. Their goal was to move away from the top-heavy, documentation-driven, Dilbert-esque world that inhibited their ability to make working software. These independent thinkers were able to come up with a common language that described their priorities. They valued individuals and interactions over processes and tools, working software over comprehensive documentation, customer collaboration over contract negotiation, and responding to change over following a plan. Teachers share these priorities. We also value people over processes and flexibility over rigidity. Too often we feel committed to follow through with bad lesson plans just because they were written, or we find ourselves using materials that we have just because we have them. We find ourselves feeling like the lesson planning process is ineffective, and at times it can feel like we're helpless to change them. Many industries that use Kanban boards also follow a Scrum model. Scrum is an agile approach to work that's related to knowledge. There are three roles that participants play in a Scrum. They're product owner, who is outward facing and explains the project to others in terms they can understand. The developers that do the work that builds the product, and the Scrum Master, who may or may not also be a developer. The Scrum Master removes impediments from the developers so that they can more easily accomplish their work. And the Scrum Master also facilitates team events and follows Scrum guidelines. So in Scrum, workflow is divided into time-boxed events called sprints. A sprint planning session is held initially, in which they list all of the work that needs to be done on a project. And then daily stand-up meetings are held, ideally for about 15 minutes or less, to ensure that everyone is on track. At the end of a sprint, there's a sprint review in which details are examined for what went well, what did not, and what work is next. A retrospective is held at the very end of the final sprint to look at the big picture for the total project. By adopting Trello and by using the Kanban board model and following agile principles and borrowing from the ideas behind Scrum, teachers can make lesson planning much more efficient. Many of us teach several courses, and it's impossible to meet with all of the different planning teams as regularly as necessary in order to keep abreast of what's going on in the team. By using Trello, we can identify what work needs to be done. We can delegate those tasks to team members. We can actually attach the documents themselves to Trello, the program. We can put due dates on the work to be done, and we can move the cards from the to do to the doing, and then finally the done. By knowing common language and having an understanding of naming conventions, our K-12 lesson planning teams can become much more agile. Please click on Module 1 Quiz to answer questions about what you've heard. Thank you for listening.